Good afternoon. Yeah, okay, great. Good afternoon. We're getting started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Liam Garrity, and I'm the Director of Hospitality for the Winery Frank Family Vineyards, and I'm so excited to welcome you today for our Caviar and Sparkling Wine Pairing virtual tasting. This was something that, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, going into, I didn't know too much about this. 15 years working in some of the finest restaurants in New York and Beverly Hills. I've paired a lot of wines with a lot of different foods. But for me, this was a learning experience because this is including an ingredient that I had never really worked with before. So a crash course in learning about it for me these last few months, and I'm really excited to be doing it today with you. I'm also excited to be joined by our caviar expert, someone who I met here in Napa Valley last year and immediately knew that I would enjoy working with so much. Her name is Danielle Megears, and she is from the company Rosie Hospitality. Danielle, great to see you. Yes. Thank you for bringing your expertise and your pairing knowledge with us today. Sparkling wine has been a part of Frank Family Vineyards since day one. Rich likes to say that when guests would first come to the winery, as it was known as Frank Family Vineyards, starting in 1993, he loved to welcome people with a glass of sparkling wine. Of course, the property where Frank Family Vineyards makes the wine, the former home of Napa Valley's first champagne-style sparkling winemaker, Hans Cornell. And so when Rich took over the property, he not only took over the grounds themselves, but everything that was on the property at the time, including a large catalog of inventory from Hans Cornell. And rather than just get rid of it, Rich's practice was to welcome guests with that Hans Cornell sparkling wine before they would taste the great Frank Family wines. That practice led to tradition and the upkeep of a tradition of sparkling wine production on the property at Frank Family Vineyards. Of course, our sparkling wines made in the method champenoise, known to be some of the greatest coming out of Napa Valley, and we're so excited to share them with you today. On the lineup, we have the 2015 Blanc de Blanc, 2015 Blanc de Blanc, our newest vintage or newest release. We also have the 2015 Brut Rosé, which we'll be beginning with today, and then a very special wine that we were happy to bring out of library for this experience, the original vintage of the Lady Edith, 2010, traditional Brut sparkling wine. Danielle, you're going to be talking about the caviar, and you're going to be introducing our guests today to the pairing concepts. Tell us a little bit about your experience in this world and how you got here. Definitely.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. When you reached out for this opportunity, I was ecstatic. Obviously, your sparkling wines are superior, so I knew it would be a great pairing.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Well, a little history about myself. I'm originally from Minneapolis, worked in restaurants pretty much my whole life, and went to college, and then eventually knew that actually I didn't want to go to medical school and I wanted to take the route of hospitality. So I moved out to San Francisco in 2018. I was the general manager at Qua Restaurant, which is a 2 Michelin star restaurant, and that's where I really dove into the world of caviar.
All right. That was the thing that they did there.
Yes.
Yeah.
We always did caviar service with multiple different kinds, multiple different preparations. Obviously, our chef was extremely talented. So I just was intrigued by it. And after I left Qua, I started my own consulting company, just working with small concepts, redoing their hospitality programs. And I was recruited by a caviar company. Mm-hmm. And that's where I entered this world that a lot of people don't get to experience.
Okay.
I was really excited. I actually would get into the tanks with the sturgeon, biopsy them, see it all from the ground up.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so great. If you ever have that chance, do it.
All right, well, I'll keep that in mind. Yes. I don't know if I'll ever get that far into it, but sounds great.
Yeah, it's just a very cool experience. And then once COVID hit, unfortunately, like the majority of people in restaurants, we had to get crafty. And that's when I started Rosie Hospitality as a catering company and also carrying caviar.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I'm really excited to share this with you today, to see how they work by themselves and see how they work with the wine. And again, guys, that's what I love to do. If you've tasted with me before at the winery, if you've done a virtual tasting with me before, you know my approach to this. Let's see how two things work independent of each other, and then see how they come together and the harmony that they create between the two. So with all of these experiences, we'll be starting by getting to know the wine, talking a little bit about the wine's personality, its flavor, its structure, its physical essence. We'll then shift gears and look at the pairing partner from the plate. Look at that caviar. Look at those choices for accoutrements that Danielle's going to share a little bit more information with us. And then see what happens when we bring these two worlds together. If you're the first, if this is the first time you're joining us for one of our virtual tastings, we want to hear about it. There's a chat section in Zoom, and please feel free to post your name and where you're coming from, what town you're living in, and where you're joining us from. If you've watched one of these with us before, I want to hear about that too, so feel free to let us know. Marissa's here with us today, of course. Marissa, our marketing manager here at Frank Family Vineyards, Marissa McCain. And as always, we'll be making sure that our audience at home is following along and paying attention by asking a couple of trivia questions over the course of the tasting. So listen carefully for those nuggets of wisdom and information, and know that trivia questions will be coming. As always, we're going to talk and share our information, but we'd love to hear from the audience at home. Any questions that you have, feel free to drop them in, and Marissa will share them with us on air. All right, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
All right. So our first pairing today is going to be featuring the 2015 Brut Rosé. Brut Rosé, of course, as you can see from the color, if you have a glass of it at home, light salmon pink hue, really elegant, very subtle in its approach and its nuances. This is made by Todd Graff in the traditional method champenoise, as all of our sparkling wines are. At Frank Family Vineyards, we follow a production method that was made famous in Champagne, France, the region that gave birth to this style of wine. Meaning that the wine is fermented in the bottle. Fermentation, the process of winemaking, converts sugar to alcohol, but in the process of doing so also creates a byproduct, and that byproduct is gas, carbon dioxide. So by fermenting wine in a sealed vessel or under pressure, that component of created carbon dioxide, absent of anywhere to go, becomes trapped in that vessel. Over time, that trapped component of carbon dioxide breaks down, subdivides, and becomes the effervescence that we love in a great glass of sparkling wine. It's that process that we do here at Frank Family Vineyards. We do the method of the Champagne region of France, which we call method champenoise. And this is a great example of a Brut Rosé in method champenoise. Aroma-wise, light citrus tones, to me almost like orange sherbet or orange, slightly sweet, not very tart. With just a hint of brioche and toasty notes underneath. It's a fabulous wine and a great wine to enjoy socially, casually in the summertime.
Cheers.
Cheers. If it's your first time drinking our Brut Rosé, I hope you're enjoying it at home. If it's a wine that you've had 100 times before, I hope you're enjoying it as much as you did the first time you had it. I like this wine for its ease and its approachability, but it still possesses a bit of acidity and a bit of lively freshness, which I think is what we're going to be looking at when we dive into the pairing. So before we do that, Danielle, we've heard about your road to caviar, but I want to know more about caviar, because I'm going to be honest with you, this is intimidating. And maybe some folks at home feel the same way. It feels like the kind of thing that if you don't know what you're doing, you may not appreciate the entirety of it, and we've got some things around the caviar, some accoutrements that we know are going to accentuate the flavor, that we know are going to add to the experience, but I don't know how. So if you could, just tell us a little bit about how caviar became the delicacy that we know it is today.
Of course, I'd love to. And my big thing is I don't want caviar. It's already intimidating, like you said. I really don't want it to be pretentious. I always want it to be approachable and fun, which it is. So, little background of caviar. The first known record of caviar was way back in the 4th century with Aristotle. Kind of crazy, I know. Right. And then traveled through the times, but really whoever put the caviar on the map was actually the Russian czars, so the monarchy.
Because it does have this kind of association
yes,
with that culture.
And decadence and over the top. So really they made it popular.
Okay.
And then also England actually has a law that any sturgeon that are harvested belong to the monarchy for caviar.
Really?
Yeah, that was started like 300 years ago.
So does that mean that British royalty are the only people that get to eat it?
No, I mean, it was kind of one of those things way back in the day where it was, just them like showing off, I guess you could say. It's definitely not enforced now. But
okay, but
fun little
it gives you
trivia
some insight
fact.
into where it lived.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but let's just get started. A lot of people don't realize that caviar can only be called caviar if it comes from sturgeon. And there's plenty of different species of sturgeon, so you're tasting 3 different species today. Paddlefish, of course.
Right.
Caluga, and our classic white sturgeon.
And Paddlefish is our first pairing partner.
It is.
All right, so we've gotten to know the Brut Rosé. I hope you're enjoying it at home. Again, if you have any thoughts or impressions from this wine, share them with us through the chat section in the Zoom conversation. What I love about this wine, moderate acidity, freshness, light, easy fruit, and then floral and some earthy undertones, some wonderful brioche, some toasted bread notes, kind of layered underneath the fruit of the wine. Let's talk about our pairing partner, which is the Paddlefish Caviar.
Yes.
Now, this is domestic.
It is, so it's domestic. So I'm currently getting the Paddlefish from Tennessee. So it lives in the tributaries of the Mississippi. Likes really cold water. It's going to be a smaller bead. It's a little bit more grayish, platinum in color. It's the cousin of the Sevruga, which is from the Caspian Sea. Unfortunately, the United States can't currently get any caviar from the Caspian Sea because it's not fished or farmed, I guess you could say. It's not sustainable.
Okay, so that's a decision.
It's illegal.
All right, so that's an ethical choice then.
Yes,
all right,
definitely,
I like
because
that.
it was overfished in the early 1900s.
Sure, so sustainability is important.
Yes.
When we approach caviar, when we get to know caviar, we have to ask questions of sustainability.
And all of the caviars you have today are sustainable. Paddlefish is going to be one of 2 sturgeon that are the only ones that you can harvest from the wild. So it's paddlefish and hackleback are the 2.
Okay.
Yes, so you'll notice it's smaller, lighter in color, and it goes great with sparkling rosé, one of my favorites.
Great, let's give it a try. All right, so the first caviar that we're pairing with is Tennessee
Paddlefish.
Paddlefish.
And
Great.
How you want to taste caviar. So what you can do is with the accoutrements, it's kind of a choose your own adventure. So you can do it, with just on a plain chip, or you can do it on a chip with creme fraiche, a little bit of the pickled onion and chive, or on the eggs, which I hope that everybody made the eggs today because they're probably my favorite.
Yeah, they are just, I'm the worst hard-boiled egg boiler. Every time I do them, I never get that gorgeous creamy center.
I know, it's
a little runny, little firm, but, so let's talk about our accoutrements real quick, Danielle. We've got potato chips, which are a little oily, a little salty. We've got creme fraiche, obviously, so a simple ingredient, but a delicious component. Creamy, a little tart. We've got the pickled the pickled shallots, which are a little, again, briny, salty, and then the chives. Yeah. And each one is gonna kind of...
It really brings out different flavors, and not only the wine, of course, but in the caviar itself. So for paddlefish, I love the paddlefish just on a chip with creme fraiche. That's probably my favorite, and then maybe a little bit of the onion.
Okay.
But the traditional way, actually, to taste caviar is on your hand. So I'm going to make you do it.
All right, let's do that. Let's give it a try.
Yeah.
And then again, Danielle, just one more question. I know I'm asking some questions, but I just want to walk into this with as much knowledge as I can. With every package, to our guests at home, we included this lovely pearl spoon, and this is more than just decorative.
Yes.
So we use the pearl spoon because...
it doesn't affect the flavor of the caviar. So certain metals will taint it and just destroy the flavor.
Okay, so this is again about getting to know the
Yes.
ingredient in its essence.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's give it a try, guys.
So you do just on your hand like this. It's called a caviar bump. But the warmth of your hand warms up the oils of the caviar, which then enhances the nuances. So kind of just like wine, you're going to get, you know, it's just the way to do it, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then you'll want to roll the beads around your tongue, and then you can feel kind of the firmness and the snap of the beads.
The snap of the bead,
Yes.
that's the break? Okay, let's give it a try. Salud.
Salud.
All right.
So this is going to be the most wild out of the three. And that is because we can't control the paddlefish's diet.
Because it's wild.
Because it's wild.
Yeah, so
it's
it
going
is
to
wild, so it tastes wild.
Yes, it's going to be a little bit more earthy because it's eating, you know, the grasses and whatnot from the bottom of the river floor.
Wow. Okay. Salty.
Yes, so you still get that bright salinity, the brininess.
Yeah, and why is caviar salty?
It's actually, well, some of it is because some, you know, comes from salt water. But a lot comes from fresh water too, and it's how it's made. So depending on the caviar maker, they'll use a certain type of salt and a certain percentage.
So this is a production thing?
Yes.
So this comes after harvesting?
So it's important, just like how wine, you need a really talented winemaker.
Yeah.
You need a really talented caviar maker.
Interesting. I mean, you wouldn't think about it, but of course, like everything that we love, there's a road between A and B.
Yes.
A being the ingredient in its purest form, the grapes and wine. And then B, the finished product that we enjoy in the glass or on the plate.
Exactly.
All right, very cool, very cool. All right, guys, what do you think? Anyone, Marissa, can we hear anything from our guests?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of you on today. Let me just give a couple shout outs. So we have Ronnie Bevan, who says she loves these tastings, and she actually won one of our trivia questions last time.
All right, Ronnie.
We have Marley's, John, Robin, and Dave tuning in from Mountain View, California today. We have Dennis Adomka, one of our most loyal viewers. He's here today from Augusta, Georgia, and it's actually his birthday. So he says, thanks for throwing a party.
You got it, Dennis.
Happy birthday, Dennis. We have Bob and Lori from Lincoln, California. They say, love your virtual tastings. Gives us an excuse to pop open some Frank in the middle of the afternoon.
Perfect. Great. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you all here with us. Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Couple others, we have Stephanie, she's joining us, says she's loving the Brut Rosé, it's easy to drink. Shelly and Phil from St. Louis are tuning in. Stephanie says the caviar with the chip is so delicious. She's tuning in with Michelle and Wayne from Fountain Valley, California. And then we have Steven, he says this is how we're celebrating our 60th anniversary. So congratulations, thank you for joining us. And a couple others, we have Heather, who's joining us from Savannah, Georgia. And she's tuning in with Heather, Amanda, and Becky.
That's great. And it's great to know that we're still, connecting with viewers, connecting with fans of Frank Family Vineyards virtually in this time, but it's also, just so encouraging to know that you're coming together in your home, that you're doing it safe, and we have this opportunity to connect again and share an experience like this with our friends in our own sphere, in our own world. Gosh, that has been a long time coming, and I'm really excited. Well, welcome everybody again. So I want to do this again, Danielle. I want to do another caviar bump. I like to get to know the ingredient in its purest form, so that we can understand when we pair, we're creating layers, right? When we make a dish, when we season a poultry, when we add carrots or red peppers to a bolognese, we're creating layers of flavor. And I think understanding those layers of flavor works best when we understand what we're looking at in each component. So I'm going to get to know this one more time. I definitely get that idea of wildness to it. This has some really grassy kind of green flavors, some salt running through it, and then it is a small bead, so a small burst.
Yes, it's just a smaller pop.
Can I try it with a little bit of potato chip?
Oh my gosh, help yourself.
Okay,
definitely. Great. Yeah, I love that, and then you should do some creme fraiche too.
Okay, so creme fraiche, potato chip, and paddlefish. Great. It's tricky, guys. It's tricky for me, all right? I have big hands. I'm not good with delicate things like this.
You'll be a pro at the end of the day.
I'm used to holding like a big steak knife and an oversized fork, so this is fun for me. I wish my mom was here today. Guys, if you're celebrating with your mom, if you're celebrating Mother's Day, Mother's Week, really, today, say cheers to your mom and enjoy the time with her.
I know. Shout out to my mom. She's watching, I believe.
Right. Shout out to all moms watching. All moms, if you're enjoying this, cheers to you. My mom will be joining us in a few weeks. I'm really looking forward to that. All right. So we're not pairing, Danielle. A lot more going on.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's what you meant. Let's choose your own adventure. Let's be aware. Let's have our mind open, our eyes open, to see what happens. Because now the unctuousness, the saltiness of the caviar is mitigated by that lovely creaminess and that hint of oil from the potato chips. All right, can we start drinking now? Can we start pairing, guys?
Oh, I already have.
All right, good. Because I want to see what happens
that's excellent.
when these two things come together. Potato chip brings a little salt, a little oil. The creme fraiche brings that really lovely, almost tangy creaminess, and then that big wild flavor coming from here. Yeah.
And then I think this is just the perfect pairing.
So let's. That is fabulous.
Come on.
Yeah.
What a great Saturday.
the sparkling wine, the Brut Rosé, really does come through with a moderate level of acidity. But the presence of that richness from the olive oil and the potato chip, that creaminess from the creme fraiche, neutralizes the acidity of the wine, but then allows those wonderfully subtle fruit tones to really shine through.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's a great pairing. Why did you think Brut Rosé was more appropriate for the paddlefish than the Blanc de Blanc?
I think because the wildness of it, and it's still very briny. And once you'll know my method of madness. Once you taste the classic with the Blanc de Blanc, it's like, okay, that one was meant to be together.
Right.
But the nice thing is that, you can intermix these because none of them are going to be bad pairings.
All right, that's good to know.
Yeah, so I mean, really, if you wanted to try the paddlefish with the Blanc de Blanc, do it.
Play around, have fun.
Yeah.
Choose your own adventure here, and choose your own adventure across the board. Right. Because pairings ultimately are always subjective.
Of course.
They're always about what you think works well together. And all of our taste buds react differently, respond differently. Our impressions of flavor formed from our memory, from our experiences. No two palates are the same.
Exactly.
That's so true. All right, well, wonderful. Okay, I hope you've been enjoying our tasting so far, guys. I hope you've been loving these wine and caviar pairings. Let's see if our audience has been paying attention. Marissa, do we have a trivia question for the group?
We do. Okay, first trivia question for the day. As a reminder, the first person to answer correctly in our chat section will be receiving a $100 gift card to Frank Family Vineyards. So let's see who has been paying attention. Here we go. We want to know, this is a two-part question. What was the first known record of caviar and who can be credited for its popularity? I'm looking at the chat section for the first correct answer. There's two answers, guys. Okay, I'm seeing people getting half of them correct. This is stumping some people. Let's see.
We up the stakes a little bit with these questions, guys.
Okay,
we've been throwing out some real softballs.
It looks like Paula Noble is correct. She says the 4th century, and it was the Russian czars. So congratulations, Paula. You just won $100 to Frank Family Vineyards. We'll be sending you an email next week with your winnings. Congratulations.
All right, congratulations, Paula. Thanks for joining us today. So 4th century, the first known record of caviar being consumed, Aristotle, but really made known, made famous by the Russian czars, the oligarchy. Wow.
Exactly.
How did it come to America?
It came actually so they ended up overfishing in Russia and Europe. Okay. So then they started purchasing sturgeon from the U.S.
Really?
In the early 1900s. And then the U.S. overfished. Yeah. To the point where now every sturgeon except for hackleback and paddlefish are endangered. So they have to be farmed.
Okay, and so this is a regulated industry.
It is.
I mean, I think that's
highly
something
regulated.
worth mentioning because there can be an idea with caviar that you don't know what you're getting.
Yes, exactly.
What is roe?
Roe comes from any other fish
Okay.
besides sturgeon. So like trout roe, salmon roe.
So caviar and roe, similar concepts but different.
But different. It
All
can
right.
only be called caviar if it's coming from a sturgeon.
Got it. All right, great.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready for our next pairing. Thank you, Danielle. That was
course.
awesome. The next wine we're going to be enjoying, friends, at home, 2015 Blanc de Blanc. So with our sparkling wine program, Blanc de Blanc represents Chardonnay the clearest. Blanc de Blanc as a term, implication in French, white of white. That's what Blanc de Blanc means, which sounds redundant because white wines are made from white grapes, or green grapes as it were. And that's a pretty fair assumption. The only place where that's not a fair assumption is, of course, Champagne, France. In the region of Champagne, 3 major grapes contribute to the production of a sparkling wine. Chardonnay is one of them, Pinot Noir is another, and the third being Pinot Meunier. Pinot Meunier and Pinot Noir are both red-skinned grapes. Chardonnay is a green-skinned grape. So the idea of a traditional Champagne is that Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier blended together creates the base wine for the sparkling wine. How come more don't have color? Because it's made strictly from the juice. The skins of those grapes are discarded during the winemaking process. So it doesn't matter what color a grape is, the juice inside is always clear. Crush the Pinot Noir, crush the Pinot Meunier, and run the juice off the skins, and you'll make a clear wine. Each one of these 3 grapes brings its identity and its personality to the blend. And this is what separates maybe your favorite sparkling wine from your second favorite sparkling wine. How they use these blends, and what Chardonnay brings: vibrancy, energy, acidity, and a real precision in terms of its fruit tones. In Champagne, these 3 grapes grow in different parts of the region, and it's a good way to hedge your bets, if you will, to blend all 3. You say, well, we would love to use X of this, X of this, and X of this, but on a bad vintage, maybe we didn't get enough of one. And so we have the other 2 that we can pull from. On a different year, maybe we get more of the first and less of the second, so we adjust our blending that way. But by having these 3 grapes that each kind of succeed in slightly different climates, we know we're going to have something to use to make the wine. Blanc de Blanc, as a philosophy, says we're going to go all in on Chardonnay. It says we're going to embrace everything about Chardonnay's spirit, everything about Chardonnay's energy, and really let that shine through. So as opposed to the Brut Rosé, which was 90% Pinot Noir, 10% Chardonnay, this is 100% Chardonnay. As a Chardonnay-based, an exclusive Chardonnay sparkling wine, you're going to notice a lot more focused and bright and vibrant citrus tone. Lemon and crisp, crunchy green apple really represents itself in the glass from the aromas and on the palate. And then buried underneath that wonderfully energetic fruit, you get that yeastiness. Now, because a sparkling wine is fermented in the bottle, because our sparkling wines are done in that traditional Champagne method, it means that the wine's fermented inside the bottle, which means in turn that yeast is present in that wine. When a sparkling wine rests, that presence of yeast that drove the fermentation, that created the alcohol and created that carbonation, it slowly essentially breaks down. It goes through a process called autolysis, which, if you've ever read in a tasting note, fresh baked bread or brioche, these bread type aromas come from that presence of enzymed yeast, of broken down yeast. And with our sparkling wines, because we're resting them sur lees, which is French for on yeast, for a period of about 4 years, you do get that wonderfully rich undertone underneath the fruit from that process of autolysis. And I love in this Blanc de Blanc the way they contrast each other. Up front, fresh, crisp, brilliant Chardonnay tones, offset by undercurrents of toasted brioche of fresh baked bread. This is the 2015 vintage Blanc de Blanc. This was disgorged. So we love what yeast does to wine. and we love what it makes in sparkling wines and in all wines. But we don't want to drink a wine that's full of that yeast. So the tradition of champagne is to ferment the wine partially in the bottle. Once that fermentation is concluded, once that component of carbon dioxide is broken down, and once that yeast is kind of layered in its presence and its personality to the wine, the bottles are held upside down, allowing gravity to pull all that component of yeast into the neck. The neck is frozen, and then inverted, the frozen plug is removed, and thus the yeast is separated from the rest of the wine. After that yeast is extracted, dosage takes place, the introduction of a small amount of slightly sweet still wine, which restores the presence of flavor and a touch of sweetness to the sparkling wine, and balances it in that sense. And then only after that is the cork and cage put on the bottle. So this is just recently disgorged. So you'll look in this wine for those toasty undercurrents as you get to know it. With this, we're going to be pairing it with white sturgeon.
Yes. So white sturgeon, this is going to be coming from the Sacramento River Delta. So any NorCalers out there, this is a local product.
I'm going to do this. Can you reuse the spoon, Danielle?
You can.
Just wipe it down, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I bogarted the spoons. That's entirely my fault, guys. I apologize about that. All right, so maybe find another corner on your plate to separate this from the paddlefish. Mm-hmm. They look similar. What would you say is the difference?
So this is going to be a slightly larger bead, so you're going to get kind of a more firm pop. Why I paired this with the Blanc de Blanc, you said crisp apple as a tasting note, which I definitely get. And this actually has kind of notes of like tangy Granny Smith apples. Yeah. Along with like the briny, sea brine, essence of sea, if you will. So
you find an almost like a crispy apple note in the caviar.
In the caviar, like kind of on the back end when you taste it.
So we're going to do the same. We're going to get to know the ingredient by itself.
Yes. So caviar I always do a bump. So this is really how caviar makers taste, caviar buyers.
Right.
They just do bumps right off their hand.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. Not quite as briny.
Not quite as briny. It's a little bit richer, more like butter. It's still really clean. You can kind of get like that tang. There's obviously that salinity, but it goes amazing with the Blanc de Blanc by itself or obviously paired.
Wonderful. I want to give that a try. So I'm going to get to know this caviar just by itself with a quick little caviar bump. Really experience that freshness of flavor that, you're right, there is a butteriness to it.
Yes, it's much richer. As we move through the three caviars, they get more rich, more unctuous, more decadent.
Oh, wow. The flavor of the Blanc de Blanc really amplifies.
Yes.
It's almost, would you say that almost some of that saltiness? One thing we do with fruit sometimes is we salt it. When you salt fruit, you really amplify, like salt does.
Yes.
It amplifies flavors.
Definitely.
It takes flavors to another degree. And what just happened there was, and you can try this at home, guys. If you're tasting the Blanc de Blanc by itself and saying, gosh, I'm not really finding that green apple note that they're talking about. Taste it again with a little bit of that caviar on the palate and watch how that saltiness from the caviar almost binds to or bonds to the fruit tones of the wine and just ratchets them up a little bit. That's really what I just got out of the pairing.
This is one of my favorites of the day. And then the next pairing is probably
I'm going to reach by you. I'm going to grab one of these eggs.
Yes,
Tell me about
please
these.
do. So these are my soft boiled eggs or jammy eggs, I like to call them.
Jammy eggs, right.
And really the key is it needs to be either 6 minutes and 30 seconds or 7 minutes, no longer.
Yeah, I think that's where I missed it.
You have to set your little egg timer, and I literally stand over the pot, when I see that there's like 30 seconds left.
Okay, and you yank them out.
And then ice bath, always an ice bath. And do you start, do you wait for the water to be boiling before you put the eggs in? You want to do like a roiling boil.
Yeah,
and then turn it onto medium heat at that point.
And what are we looking at in terms of an accoutrement? What is this going to bring to the table?
So it really brings like that richness, and normally you salt your eggs, so this is salting the egg essentially.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I'm going for it.
Do it.
Kelsey, are you jealous? Marissa, are you jealous? Guys, if you've watched our show before, you know that Marissa and Kelsey are always in the background, turning the knobs and making sure everything's running smoothly. These two were looking at this with anticipation of when they get theirs.
I got some for you girls, don't worry.
I also do want to remind everyone that the recipes were shared, so they can make these at home too. So they all have Danielle's recipes.
Yeah, absolutely. Danielle's recipes, she was kind enough to give them to us. We included them in every box that we mailed out with the caviar on the side. If you didn't get one, shoot me a call, or you can just visit the website where they're still posted. Yeah, that's so great, Danielle. The eggs yolk just runny enough. The caviar just really sinks in there. Yeah. The salt makes it all pop, and then
it's pretty
the
special.
acidity.
And then, yeah, that's
just cuts right through and elevates everything. That is a great pairing. Now, did the Russian Tsars drink sparkling wine?
You know what? That's a great question. I'm not exactly sure. I would imagine that they probably did.
I think they did.
I think so.
that there was a lot of French, Russian import, export, and I think sparkling wine was one of the things that they loved. Again,
because it was really the French that paired sparkling wine with caviar.
Okay.
Or champagne, I should say. Since it was for France.
We're enjoying it kind of as a main star today. How would you incorporate caviar into a dinner?
Definitely. I love caviar, so you can do like a traditional service like this at the beginning of dinner. Or the Kaluga, for example, which we'll taste next, goes great with like a cacio e pepe. So like pastas with like a richer, like cheesy sauce. My chef used to do a Parmesan dashi broth with tortellini with a little bit of ricotta. And then it's topped with the classic white sturgeon.
Oh, wow.
So like simple pasta dishes, you can throw caviar on. You could...
Yeah.
I mean, it's so versatile, really. I had a chef who would do A5 Wagyu and just lightly sear it and then serve it with like Russian Osetra on top.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then like some of the jus from the pan and...
Oh, so like a great thin cut of beef?
Yes, like super thin and then like a nice layer of caviar on top.
Right.
And that actually goes great with like a red pairing even.
A red wine, sure. Because you're getting the richness from the beef.
Of course.
But then the saltiness, the brininess of the caviar is amplifying those flavors. And then you get that burst.
Yes.
That burst of the bead.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Your plate looks a lot better than mine. You're definitely better than I am at using the spoon.
I've had a little bit more practice.
Is anyone else at home struggling with this guy? I mean, I know that he's the thing I need to use. I don't want the flavors of metal to influence it, but this to me is like a Baskin Robbins thing, you know?
Oh, bro. Totally get it.
So you grew up in Minneapolis. I grew up in Minneapolis too. What was your favorite Minneapolis restaurant when you were a kid?
When I was a kid?
Oh, or like when you were...
Yeah.
Or when you were working.
Well, a kid, like way back in the day, I'm originally from a northern suburb, so Anoka, if you will.
Yeah.
But there was, it was called Tequila Berries. My mom still makes their salad. But yeah, that was like the fancy, you know, we'd get like my grandparents and everyone together and
go to Tequila Berries.
Yes, and she's obsessed with the salad still, 20 years later.
Mine was Palomino in downtown Minneapolis.
Work across from Palomino.
Did you really?
Actually, I worked at Solera forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had my 21st birthday there, and I felt so fancy because obviously I work in wine, so I was not doing a pub crawl on my 21st birthday. We went to dinner at Palomino and had a couple bottles of wine. That's how I celebrated.
Very fancy.
Yeah, very fancy. Right. Now, one thing that we haven't touched on is the shallots and the chives. How do we bring those in? What do we incorporate?
You know what? If you'd like, so what I do is I layer the chip with the creme fraiche and caviar, and then you can just put a little bit of shallot and chive on top.
All right.
And it just adds like a brightness to it.
Yeah.
You know, especially with the pickled shallot, it's really bright. Goes great, you know, it brings out different nuances with the sparkling wine as well.
Anyone at home watching want to share what's working with them from the accoutrement point of view? Anyone want to chime in and say what they're loving in terms of these various components and how they come together? Let me know, Marissa, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to fire one up. Creme fraiche, shallot, and white sturgeon.
Yes. And Danielle, you told us a really cool story about the shallots and kind of the history and why you have them with caviar.
Oh,
Can you share
yes.
that?
I love that you brought that up. So actually, before, really caviar was just consumed on its own, up until the point of fishermen who would just be harvesting the sturgeon, and they would throw the caviar essentially on the bar top, and they would mask because they'd let it go when it shouldn't be enjoyed, really.
Oh, I see. So it was a little,
past the point of when it's good, but they would then do the accoutrements.
Yeah.
So they'd throw a bunch of, pickled shallots, chives, creme fraiche, anything to just kind of mask that.
Okay.
But little did they know that they, just expanded the world of caviar.
Right, just created an entire genre.
Yes, because it really enhanced the flavor. Mm-hmm. And that was early 1900s.
Now this, you said, is domestic as well. This comes from California.
Yep, Sacramento.
But it's farmed rather than wild.
Yes.
And because it's farmed, the flavor profile is less grassy or less wild. I call it grassy. That could be the totally wrong term for it. But it's, that's my way of kind of giving language to something that doesn't have a definition or a word, which is the flavor experience that I get. And the difference that I see between 1 and 2. I really love this white sturgeon, and I love this Blanc de Blanc.
The reason that it is so clean compared to, and not as wild as the paddlefish, is because it's farmed, of course. And actually, a sturgeon farm is a huge investment because it takes about 10 years until you can harvest a sturgeon.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So
Okay.
10 years, they get to be huge, about 6 feet, 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And then you hop in the tanks with them and then biopsy them to see if the eggs are ready.
Where they are and if they're ready.
And if they're good enough, I guess you could say.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and then the reason why it's so fresh is they purge the tanks with just fresh water for about 2 weeks before harvest. And then that results in a really clean, beautiful product.
Amazing. So much behind what we're enjoying here. So many steps to the process.
It's really just like a winery, that there's so much stuff that goes into it behind the scenes to get the finished product to be really high quality and amazing.
Very cool. Thank you, Danielle. I want to check in with the crew at home, make sure that we're enjoying what we're experiencing today, and see if there's any questions coming from the crew. Marissa?
Okay, so I want to give a couple more shout outs and then maybe go into our next trivia question.
Great.
So we have Amy Burkett, who's joining us today from Ohio, and she said she discovered Frank Family Vineyards thanks to a friend, and she's loving all of the wines today. And Dennis says that his wife Terry is loving the creme fraiche and the caviar, so that sounds delicious. Thank you guys, and keep writing into the chat section, letting us know what you're liking. Okay, so let's move on to our next trivia question. And again, just write your answers into the chat section. I'm looking, and we're going to be giving away another $100 gift card. So here we go. What are the 2 sturgeon that can be harvested legally here in the U.S. from the wild? We're looking for 2 answers.
I know this one.
Okay, people are quick with this one. All right, let's see. Stephanie, sorry, everything. Close. Okay, Stephen, that's correct. The white sturgeon and paddlefish, correct. Is it correct?
That is not correct.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Let's try again.
Let's try again, guys. Philip, hackleback, and paddlefish. That's correct, right? Okay. Sorry about that. It was a hard one. I got stumped too.
That was a hard one, but we walked into this saying, no freebies here, guys. We've been giving you guys easy questions in the last few, and we wanted up the stakes. Philip, congratulations. Glad that you are on board watching this today, enjoying, I hope, and paying attention, that's for sure. Hackleback.
Yes.
And paddlefish. Where is hackleback right now coming from?
Tennessee.
Also Tennessee?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they really live you can find them even in Minnesota.
Really?
But there's not a caviar facility there
yet. We are going to work on that.
Yeah, we should.
I'm going to call my mom and
right?
see what she wants to do about it.
Get it going.
See if maybe we'll put it in Anoka. All right. Let's talk about our next wine, guys. And again, this is a special wine here at Frank Family Vineyards. If you've been a fan for us for a long time or for a little, maybe you've heard of it. This is the Lady Edith. And this is a very special one because for this presentation, we wanted to really dial in on a unique wine to share. So we pulled from the cellar the original vintage of Lady Edith, which is the 2010. Currently at the winery, we're sharing the 2012 vintage of Lady Edith, and that will be available for our guests online soon. But for this one, we went a couple years back. You talk about a sparkling wine, and you talk about aging a sparkling wine. There's really two chapters to the life of a great champagne, or a great champagne-style sparkling wine. Chapter 1 is the amount of time it spends sur lise, that aging of the wine, wherein the yeast that drove the fermentation, that created the alcohol, and that of course created the carbon dioxide, well, that yeast is still situated in the bottle. That's chapter 1 of a great sparkling wine's aging. And then chapter 2 is what happens to that sparkling wine in its aging after the wine has been disgorged, after that component of yeast has been removed, and then after that component of dosage has been added. And this now begins a second aging life of a great sparkling wine. So when someone says, how does sparkling wine taste aged? You need to understand that there's really, again, two chapters. With our traditional sparkling wines, our Blanc de Blanc, our brut rosé, we're looking at leaving the wines sur lise, resting on those expired yeast cells, for a period of about 3.5 to 4 years. With a wine like Lady Edith, we're extending that time, leaving it on yeast for a longer period of time, allowing the creation, the transformation of autolysis to take place for a longer period, building in more of those rich, round, yeast-derived undertones of flavor to complement and contrast the brightness of the fruit. And then on top of that, we're aging it in chapter 2 for a longer period of time as well, because now it's 2021. This was disgorged, I believe, in 2016, 6 years sur lise, then 4 years after the yeast is removed, continuing to evolve and transform. So I'm really looking forward to experiencing how the flavors of the Lady Edith are different from the flavors that we found in the Blanc de Blanc. Where does that fruit live? Where does that autolytic note live? How do the two juxtapose? How do they contrast? And then how do they weave back together? It really is intertwining the way these flavors come together. Quick word about the naming of this wine, Edith Frank, Rich Frank's mother. We, of course, have a very famous wine called the Patriarch, made in honor and in dedication to Rich's father, High Frank, World War II veteran, and truly the patriarch of Frank family as we understand it and know it to be. But Rich's mother, equally important to Rich and Leslie Frank, and an equally wonderful story. Edith Frank, definitely an influence, an impression on Rich's life in so many ways, remembered in this very special bottle of wine. Now, we've been making what the French refer to as a tête de cuvée. In Champagne, France, we see the multi-vintage all the time. Use mostly fruit from this year, blend it with some fruit from last year, and blend that with some fruit from a couple years ago. This idea of creating consistency in our sparkling wine by blending multiple vintages together. Champagne region can be fairly inconsistent in its weather, and not every year is going to be a banner year. So they have really come to embrace this approach to winemaking, where multiple vintages come together. It gives the wine a bit of complexity from those older vintages blended in. It gives the wine a lot of freshness and vibrancy from the current release. And additionally, it keeps the product consistent every year, so that you know if you love Veuve Clicquot, it's going to be Veuve Clicquot because they've created it in that style. But on occasion, in Champagne, France, they say this was a great year, and we want to remember this year. And so then these champagne houses create in those banner years the tête de cuvée, the top blend. And Dom Perignon is a top blend, Cristal is a top blend, Le Grand Dame from Veuve Clicquot. These are all considered those tête de cuvées. At Frank Family Vineyards, Lady Edith is our tête de cuvée. The 10 vintage is what we're getting to explore today. Let's get to know this wine, Danielle.
Yes.
Right off the bat, the nose, very different from what we experienced in the Blanc de Blanc. The fruit is present, yet a little softer. The acidity is less energetic. The autolytic notes, those wonderful brioche tones, are a bit more apparent. And that to me is what I like to highlight when I'm talking about what happens when a wine matures, when a wine ages. When should we drink this wine? A question that we hear all the time at the winery. And I think the best answer is now. Today, right now. No. You should drink it on the spot right here. No, the question is, what do you want out of the wine? What are you looking to experience? Do you want the brashness, the ripeness, the energy of the fruit in its youthful form? Then drink that now. Do you want that fruit to subside a little bit? Do you want that boisterous energy to mellow out a little bit? Do you want some of those undertones to move from the background to the forefront a little bit? Then allow that maturation to happen. Give that wine a little bit of time. And this is a wonderful example of how both the extended time surlies on yeast, but then also that additional time that we've allowed it to rest in the cellar, have created a wine flavor that's more decadent, more rich, more complex, and ultimately, subjectively, at home, more exciting.
It's lovely. I mean, it's a very special wine.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to Todd Graff and to Rich Frank, Leslie Frank, and Edith Frank,
Edith.
the namesake for this beautiful wine. Let's talk a little bit about our imported caviar selection. This is called the Kaluga Hybrid.
Yes. So the reason why I paired it with the Lady Edith is because just like how this one's more toasty, rich, full, so is the Kaluga.
Yeah?
It's going to be super decadent, super rich, buttery. You'll notice it's the largest bead of the day.
Yeah, it sure is.
So you're going to get an even larger pop. But this happens to be, all the chefs that I work with, probably their favorite, because it's so layered with different flavors and nuances.
Okay, I'm going to spoon up, and then I'm going to drop off a little, and I'm going to take the rest right here so that I can experience.
See, you're a pro.
I know, look at me, right? I still feel like a giant holding this spoon, but I'm getting better at this part.
You are. Yeah, it's pretty special.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, so the brininess is decreased. A lot less of that kind of jumping out at you saltiness. Yeah, creamy, buttery. You feel its oil just accumulate and move around on the palate.
Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, it has like kind of the same texture as, the jamminess of the yolk and the egg. I mean, it's really beautiful. And then you pair it with the richness of the Edith, and it's just...
That's my next move.
Mind-blowing.
I'm going to try that right now.
Yes, and this is coming from the Amur River Basin, which is between China and Russia.
Okay. And of course, sustainability as well.
Yes, so this is sustainable, so it has to be, it is farmed, sustainable. U.S. is highly regulated, but this is going to be the closest cousin to the famed beluga.
Beluga caviar.
Yes.
That's
so
up there.
that is what everybody seeks out. So they're wild from the Caspian Sea. You can't get it in the U.S.
Okay.
Because it's not sustainably farmed.
I see. And Osetra is a similar?
Yes. So Russian Osetra you can get. That's just the name of the sturgeon. So currently you can get Russian Osetra from Israel and Uruguay. But this is from...
That is decadent.
It's so good. Yes. But this will be the closest that you can get legally to beluga in the U.S.
Well, it's certainly a delicacy, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's pretty
I'm gonna
fantastic.
try it.
Yes.
With the accoutrements.
I mean, this one's so rich that you almost don't even need creme fraiche
I
with
guess
it.
yeah. I guess that's a good point. It's like, do you want to?
But you can. I mean,
do you
just
want to
really double
embrace
down.
the purity of the flavor, or do you want to see how they mix? If my mom could see me now, I was the kid that grew up on macaroni and cheese.
Love it.
My idea.
Hot dish, perhaps.
Well, yeah. Now you're calling me out for my Midwest roots. Yeah. If my mom could see me now, Mom, when you come in a couple of weeks, we're going to do the caviar, okay?
Definitely.
Now, for those people who are at home watching this and planning their next trip to Napa Valley, I think people are going to travel differently when they come to Napa. They're not going to think about going out quite as much. I mean, there's such a wealth of wonderful ways to enjoy Napa in a private residence. Rosie Hospitality specializes in
we do.
In providing service.
Yep, we definitely got crafty during the pandemic and realized that people still wanted that fine dining experience, wanted to be taken care of. So I teamed up with a couple chefs in the area, and we go into Airbnbs or wineries or any venues, homes, and do a full course tasting menu.
Very, very cool.
Or just like past appetizers, whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's 100% customized.
And I know it's one thing that you and I are going to continue to work on.
Yes,
as we open up and as we come back into the tasting room, as we welcome guests back into our lives here in Napa and our property, we want to be offering something like this for you to do with us here, whenever that time may come.
It's very special, it's a unique experience, and that's really what, I pride myself in at Rosie, is taking care of people.
Great. Something that you and I share, things that we love to do in our professional lives. Marissa, I think we have one more trivia question that we want to ask for the group at home.
We do. Okay, so last trivia question for the day. Let's see who was paying attention. This was mentioned a little while ago. We want to know, what is the scientific term for the process our sparkling wines undergo in which enzymes break down dead yeast cells? So let's see. Okay, they were really quick with this one. Ronnie is correct. It is autolysis.
Ronnie, you won already.
Did she? No. We had Paula.
Not today. But
okay.
Didn't Ronnie say she had won one before?
Yes, that's right. Okay, Ronnie.
But I know Ronnie. Ronnie, I've spoken to you on the phone at the winery, and I'm glad you're watching today. It's great to have you joining us today. Thank you. Thank you for being part of this.
We have a couple more shout outs we can give. Let's see. We have Erin Luckett. I saw she was here today. She says she loves the Lady Edith. John and Suzanne are loving this party, they said. We have some Minnesota friends on. Barbara says that she says yes to caviar in Minnesota.
Yay, Barbara!
And yes to tequila berries, too.
Tequila berries. Yes to tequila berries. I wonder if Barbara experienced tequila berries.
We have one question, Liam. I'm not sure of this, but maybe you can help. Brooks Longfellow is saying, what happened to the brandy finished sparkling wine circa 2001?
Right, okay. All right, so it's Brooks?
Brooks, yes.
Okay, Brooks, wonderful, wonderful thing. So let's go deep back into the recesses of the Frank Family Vineyards history and mythology. Todd Graff joined Frank Family Vineyards in 2003. His first vintage from pick, from taking care of the growing harvest, the season, 2003. And one of the reasons why Todd was such a perfect fit for Frank Family Vineyards is because of his broad range of expertise. Cabernets, Chardonnays, the dessert wines that we do, the sparkling wines that we do. He brought his experience with all of these wines. We have in the past, if you look at your bottle of Lady Edith, you will notice a beautiful little, almost like a squiggle drawing, almost like a child's drawing of a woman tipping back a glass. We had released in years prior to 2010 a reserve champagne, a reserve sparkling wine at Frank Family Vineyards. And the bottle did not have a label like this. It simply had that drawing screened over it. And there was one, I think, in 2000. I think there was one in 2006. And then in 2010, Todd, Rich, and Leslie launched the Lady Edith program. Legend has it that those early examples of sparkling wine were dosage, with cognac, because we had some cognac, because we make a port. So port wine, if you're not familiar with it, port wine is made from partially fermented red wine, in our case, mostly Zinfandel, and then the addition of brandy, a grape spirit, non-aged in wood, so a neutral grape spirit, added to partially fermented wine, increases the alcohol content, but also kills yeast, so stops fermentation, which traps a lot of the natural grape sugar. And then as this mix kind of solidifies, it becomes brandy. I'm sorry, it becomes port, excuse me. So I think there had been legend that we used some of that brandy as a dosage to the sparkling wine in 2006. This does not have a cognac dosage. This is the dosage is like every sparkling wine, a dosage of still wine made in the same style as the sparkling version, just adding a touch of sweetness. It seems odd to me that cognac was considered a good dosage because cognac is not sweet. You know, cognac is an alcohol, it's a spirit. So I don't know, I've never had a cognac dosaged sparkling wine or a brandy dosaged sparkling wine, but it definitely is a thing of legend that the elders speak of around the hollows of Frank Family Vineyards. If anyone has a bottle of that cognac dosaged wine, let me know and I wanna hear about it.
Lovely. I want to try it.
I know, right?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Well, that about does it for us today. We had a wonderful opportunity to share 3 great sparkling wines, Frank Family Vineyards 2015 vintage Brut Rosé, our brand new, just released 15 vintage Blanc de Blanc, and then pulled from the cellar, our 2010 Lady Edith sparkling wine, our Tête de Cuvée. Danielle Megears was so kind to share her expertise with us.
Thank you so
Danielle,
much for having me.
Pairing the Paddlefish, the white sturgeon, and the Kaluga hybrid. I hope you folks at home enjoyed your time with us today. Happy Mother's Day, a week late to all the mothers watching with their sons and daughters, to all the mothers sharing this with us today. Thank you. A couple things to keep on your radar from Frank Family Vineyards. The new vintage of the Lady Edith, the 2012 vintage Lady Edith. A little bit more time Sur Lees, a little bit more time off yeast in its aging. We're going to be releasing that wine early this summer, as well as just in just a week or so, wonderful information about our new vintage of Patriarch, our Cabernet Sauvignon made in honor of Hi Frank. And then last thing I'll mention, guys, our next virtual tasting, the 3rd of July, we'll be welcoming a chef, Jack Arnold, celebrity chef Jack Arnold, to the property at Frank Family Vineyards, working with a wonderful purveyor of some of the best steak in America, cow steaks, doing American Wagyu. We're going to be inviting you all to join us with Jack Arnold as he teaches us how to cook the perfect steak, and we'll be talking about pairing a great steak with Frank Family Wines. That's going to be Saturday, July 3rd, and I hope you watching at home will join us for that event as well. And if you're traveling, come see us at Frank Family Vineyards. We're open, we're welcoming guests back to the property, and I can't wait to see you all. Thank you, Danielle.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.
And I'll see you soon.